Good afternoon, folks. Welcome. We are looking for the Brandon Hall Group Allego webinar. You are in the right place. We will get started shortly. Give folks some time to come on in. In the meantime, go ahead and find that chat box. We'll be using that throughout our time together today. Let us know where you're joining us from today. Some Maryville, Tennessee, Scottsdale, Cleveland, Charlotte. Just got back from the Charlotte area not that long ago. New Jersey, Texas, Knoxville, Salt Lake City. Germany. Eleanor, I think you might win. We'll see though. Toronto, San Francisco. All right. One more minute. East Coast is well represented today. East Coast US. Awesome. Well, I'm sure folks are going to keep kind of popping in here, but we've slowed down just a little bit. So, in the interest of keeping things moving, welcome again. My name is Matt Pittman. I'm a principal analyst with Brandon Hall Group. And this is delivering AI-powered learning for modern buying experiences amid shrinking attention spans. Today's webinar, I'm happy to have with us Jake Miller, Senior Product Marketing Manager from Allego. How's it going, Jake?
Good. How are you, Matt? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you. So Jake joined Allego after a commercial launch to help establish product marketing and lead ongoing strategic use case development and commercialization efforts. Jake is passionate about sales performance and incorporates his experience as a salesperson in the commission-only high-ticket retail world into his approach for product marketing at Allego. And he has a lot of great stuff to talk about today in looking at. So looking forward to the conversation. And we do want to thank Allego, who is our webinar sponsor today. Allego is the future of revenue enablement. Their modern revenue enablement platform transforms traditional methods by illuminating field learning, delivering content and experiences for modern buyers, and uniting revenue teams for continuous improvement and growth. Trusted by nearly 1 million professionals in 65 countries, Allego offers a comprehensive app for learning content, coaching, and virtual selling that's loved by reps. They are chosen by a quarter of Dow Jones Industrial Average companies, 5 of the top 10 US banks, 3 of the top 5 US insurance companies, 4 of the top 5 global medical device companies, 6 of the top US wealth management firms, and 14 of the top 20 US asset management companies. Please check them out at their website at allego.com. We appreciate their sponsorship today. If this is your first time on a Brandon Hall Group webinar, we are more than webinars. We are a full service analyst firm supporting the improvement of HCM excellence across the spectrum of practice areas. We have a robust membership program, the largest membership-based research library in the space. We have a preferred provider program. Our excellence awards is something that we're also very well known for. Still time to get those technology award applications in. We also do certification programs and other networking and development opportunities. So feel free to check that out. The heartbeat of what we do, though, is our research, and we have a couple of surveys that are currently open. We encourage you to check those out and add your voice. You will get a copy of this deck at the end. Excuse me. And so you'll have those links that you can go straight to those surveys or go to our website and click on open surveys. And we do want today to be as interactive as possible, especially given apparently I'm going to cough my way through the front part of it. I apologize for that. I am getting over a little bit of a cold from the weekend. But you've already found the chat, and I see people have jokes. Oh, Jake, you dropped the joke. Nice. I like it. I had lots of Legos on the floor of my house when my kids were younger, so I have experienced that pain. You do eventually get over it. The other option that we have for interaction is the Q&A feature. Take a minute to find that. You can submit your questions as we go through, and we will do our best to get to those before we end our time together. And if you want, there is also the raise hand feature that's available to you. If you can click on that just to let me know you know where it is. As we go through, there may be an opportunity for us to say, hey, raise your hand if that sounds right to you. Awesome. You guys have figured that out. I appreciate it. We're actually going to kick things off with a polling question. So as we get started today, we want to know what best describes your job function. So there's a couple of options there. Are you an individual contributor? Are you a sales leader? Are you in sales enablement or L&D? Are you in marketing? Or if you're in something else, just select that other and type that into the chat. That poll is open now. Thank you, David. I also have David Forey from the Brandon Hall Group is in the background supporting our webinar today. So thanks so much for getting that up, David. We'll take a couple of minutes to hear where everyone is from. I am going to take a second and drink some more water. All right, let's take a look at who we've got in the house this afternoon. David, go ahead and put those results up. Survey says, all right. So there you go, Jake, about half of in the sales enablement and L&D space, about fourth in the individual contributor space, and got a sales lead on here as well. Some HR recruiters and LMS managers, excellence, training developers as well. Awesome. Well, we're glad to have all of your perspectives. And I think as if any of you follow my LinkedIn posts, you know that I said that there's something for everyone on today, not just in the sales space, but anyone that's interested in how AI intersects with learning. We're gonna dive deep on that. So to get started, let's take a look at some recent survey data. Anything you want to add before I jump in, Jake?
No, I think that covers it. I'm excited to talk about this and just to put a double click or double down on your last point about this is definitely applicable to folks outside the sales organization as well. Talk a little bit about how a lot of the companies that we work with, it's kind of like often starts in the sales organization, but then other groups get wind of it, and so you see lots of folks across the org using this stuff.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So Brandon Hall Group, we've been talking about the importance of technology and personalized learning and enabling that unique learner experience for a while. And we did a survey last year, and one of the things one of the powers that AI brings to the learning conversation, and Jake is going to get into this in a little more detail, is that ability to really customize or personalize, is probably a better way to say that, the learning content that gets delivered or highlighted for me as a learner based on what I need to learn, what I want to learn, what the organization has available for me. So we asked last year, what extent is your organization delivering personalized learning? And it was only about 22% were doing it to a very high extent or a high extent. Most were somewhere in the middle, and a few still not doing much of personalized learning at all. And when we talk about how well that approach to personalized learning is positioning you to develop the skills that the organization needs for the future of work, and this is exactly where we are with a lot of learning and a lot of skills-based needs. You can see that it's still a mixed bag. Only about 37% feel like they are doing it really well, and that your learning strategy is preparing you, your learning approach is preparing you to prepare your workforce, and most are somewhere in the middle. And I'd be curious on this one, if you guys want to drop in the chat, where do you feel about the learning approach in your own organization? Is it preparing you guys, your organization, well to meet the demands of what's coming now and in the very immediate future? Since, as we all know, the future of work really is here. So if you've got any thoughts about that, drop that in the chat as we go through, and we'll take a look at that. The other thing that, as Jake and I were preparing for today, is looking at what are the challenges, what are the things that are getting in the way of looking at how do we make sure the learning and the content that we're building for our folks is really helping them, it's really driving that skills development. And there's a lot of the common things that come up, but I really want to focus in on these two that are highlighted on this slide, where learning technology, the ecosystem is not adequate to support our future skills development needs, and learning content does not support the skills we need to develop. And I think these are two areas, Jake, where we're going to see how AI can really impact these two challenges a lot. All right. And then lastly, earlier this year, we did a pulse survey to talk about the role of AI and ChatGPT in learning. And one of the things that we think, one of the reasons we want to start tackling this topic even more is because our constituency believes that accelerating training content development and scaling learning activities are the two of the strongest use cases for the use of generative AI within the HR space. And so we're going to look at a lot of the different ways that AI can come to play an important role in learning. So with that context of sort of, this is what we're thinking right now, and this is what you're thinking, because that comes straight from our survey data. Jake, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's jump in and see what this AI and learning thing is all about.
All right. Excellent. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Thank you, everybody. So really excited to talk about this. Gonna just go ahead and kind of just give you a feel for how some of these technologies are being applied in organizations today. As the title of the webinar and a lot of the audience, it's definitely a focus on sales, but also and on the revenue team in general, the front of the house. But I am going to talk throughout about how these are then applied to leadership development training and, call center training and just general, any employees development. So really excited to jump in. Thank you everybody for joining. So yeah, I'm gonna just walk through some of these. And the other thing I want to point out too is I am going to show you some actual like screenshots of what some of this stuff looks like. The ones that I have available are Allego, so it's going to be showing some of the Allego product, but this is not an advertisement for the Allego product in any way. And I will reiterate throughout that, this is just an example, and there are plenty of other vendors who do very similar things. And so this is to kind of give you a feel for what are the things that are out there, what does it actually look like? So when you think about the kind of how can you where and how do you apply AI in the learning journey? If you think of it from the perspective of any initiative that, from a chronological perspective, like, a learner maybe at the beginning of onboarding, they have to come in and, it might start with, and I'm going to grab my laser pointer here. It might start with this over here, learning and acquiring knowledge. Then they have to certify and assess and then do some practice and then actually show how they execute and then improve. And then reinforcement is sort of the all pervasive, that's always happening in the background. And so this kind of, this sort of process could be for like a new employee onboarding. This could be for, if you launch a new product and you're putting, you're putting folks through a process like this to get everyone up to speed on that, or someone enters into a new role. This is sort of, looking at the phases of sort of the learning process or journey, if you want to call it. So this first one here, learn and, knowledge acquisition. I'm going to talk about how AI is used in creating course content. Creating assessments is a really key feature, especially for GPT or generative AI. And then how it's used in peer-to-peer learning to facilitate more of a rich share of knowledge, sharing of knowledge among the field, among employees, managers, etc. I'm going to talk a little bit about how it incorporates into assessments and certifications, and how some really interesting ways that it's being used, some generative AI. And I'm going to show you a little bit of use of virtual actors to do role playing with different folks and stuff. Some really interesting and cool and useful ways to help folks practice before they get in front of a critical conversation. And that could be, I'm going to talk in a sales context, but it could also be, but I will give some examples of, leadership development, having a critical conversation with a report, etc. And then execute. And then, this is so much of our exchange of information and communication is happening over video conference now, for whether it's a sales role, a services role, client success, or even a manager having a leader in a leadership development program, having a coaching conversation with somebody over Zoom or WebEx or a virtual conference. Now we've got the ability to, capture all of that. So that gives us a trail of content now that's getting captured. And so I'll show you how, using AI to pipe that footage into a learning platform and use that to create learning materials to do coaching on, etc. And then improvement. And I'll show you how, we've got this, we call it AI coaches or AI virtual coaches, which is basically, an automated way of giving feedback to lots of different learners. And then also reinforcement. I'll show you some really useful ways that that companies are using this AI technology to kind of scale and make the reinforcement of knowledge more programmatic. All right, so I'm going to jump right in here. Oh, didn't realize I had this here. Okay, so I'm going to go right into the first one here for around learn. So it's the key is, being able to enhance the learning experience. I talked a little bit already about this, but, generating quiz questions, recommending learning to match needs and preferences, personalizing the paths that learners are going through, And then even automating the tagging of content. And I'm going to show you a little bit, talk a little bit about user-generated content for capturing knowledge from the field. And using AI to sort of curate and catalog that and make it scalable. And some of the benefits, obviously, here it's freeing up time for learners, but also for trainers, and for folks like yourselves for developing, assessments and things of that nature, and quiz questions, knowledge checks. One of the, that I'll kind of give you a little bit of background on that. Many of you may have already started to play around with something like Chat GPT for developing assessments. I mean, you can take a transcript from a training session and go to Chat GPT and copy the transcript, paste it into there, and ask it to give me a 10-question assessment based on this information, and it will do a pretty good job. Now, the key with this is you do have to be really diligent about, this is about saving time. It's not about eliminating all of your work, because you got to be the one to check it for sort of sanity check it. I mean, make sure, because it will, any of these models will come out with a stuff that may be wrong or not understand something that was said. So, but now what some of the drawbacks, though, if you're just going into Chat GPT to do this, is it's not as secure. You've got to worry about the information that all of you are imparting on the employees is the sensitive information, whether it's compliance, whether it's commercial, very confidential commercial information, really really high value. So the security can be a roadblock, with using something like ChatGPT, because you're giving your information to it. Even if you turn off they've got a new feature where you can turn off the chat history. It's still not it's not going to be enterprise grade level security for something like that. So that's where you're starting to see a lot of technologies, learning platforms that are incorporating stuff like this. So now what things that you should be looking out for, if you're evaluating a new learning technology, learning platform, LMS, or more of a modern kind of a version of an LMS that's more of the experience based, is the ability to write within you can take an hour training, that a presentation that you put on, or one of your folks on your team put on, and with one button, click generate assessment, and it will it'll generate a really good, solid set of quiz questions for you. And then you can use that to bring those into the presentation, and you can even use that to kind of break up the presentation into small bits, and then have those be separate separate videos for folks to be able to watch. So a really really powerful time saver there, and a really really useful application of this. Another thing to talk about here is learning recommendations, learning, making again, back to personalizing the learning experience. I'll show you this. This is just an example of what some of these field sourced learning content might look like. And this is an example of a learning platform, and your learner may log in, and you've got everything completely personalized to them based on their role, their skill level, their demonstrated competencies based on your organization's competency framework or skill framework, if you have one, or just something more basic if you don't have a full framework, etc. And their location, their team, etc. So they come in and they're already seeing a very personalized sort of screen with just the right content for them. And then this here is using AI to basically recommend situationally the right, here's how I did this, right? Another person in their role, or someone from another team, or in another geo, who's doing something similar to what the learner is tasked with doing, they're able to quickly see an example from the field, and it's candid, it's captured on, that other learner, was able to quickly capture that on their mobile or on their desktop or whatever it might be. And then, these platforms now are able to take the content that's getting captured by learners out in the field, and quickly, tag that, and add it to the right collections of content that you've got, and then be able to surface it right there in a recommendation for them. You're probably thinking, how do you get learners to capture their content? That's another area where, using AI to route the content into the system. So basically, it's making it really easy for any learner who, when they're coming out of a situation, the platform can see that they've left, that for in a sales context, right? Through the CRM, you can see that the salesperson just changed the stage of the opportunity. And so now you have the learning platform is integrated with that. Ping the rep on their mobile device saying, hey, capture a quick report, a quick win report. Maybe it was they just closed one, change the deal stage to closed one. And then the learning platform pings them, capture a 2-minute video on on what you think the most important things were. And, when you make it really easy for learners like that, and you prompt them, and you have these automated mechanisms that will be pinging folks and prompting them, you'd be surprised to see how often folks will start submitting their insights. And then, that it's, using AI to tag those, route them into the right set of collections. And if you've got, we've got, a ton of organizations using this across financial services, and, Nuveen and TIAA, and, Medtronic, like in medical device, like all these big, highly regulated industries doing this today. And so there's all kinds of workflows for being able to make sure that the videos are getting approved by the right parties before they're shared out as a best practice example, et cetera. So, but again, using AI to scale these processes, it's never about replacing the human element. It's always just about making things move more quickly. Yeah. And so, and oh, yeah, and I say, oh yeah, Matt, thank you for asking the question. Yeah, curious to hear from everybody. What if you're using any kind of learner generated, field generated content in your strategy. All right, so I'm gonna keep moving here, and want to talk a little bit about the application of AI in practice and certification. There's some really interesting stuff here. So when you think about how from a skills perspective, how can we help learners, especially those who are in roles where it's about conversations, having critical conversations, right? And this is, again, talking about a sales role, services role, customer service, customer success. It could be leadership as well. Your leaders have to be able to have thoughtful and on message, really, conversations with their reports as well, to represent the company properly, and everything like that. So this is ways to allow folks to practice these different scenarios with in like a lifelike type of way, without having to go and actually practice on in the live conversation, right? One of the things in sales they say is, oh, give me enough at bats. They say, give me enough at bats and I'll get the messaging down. But the problem with that is, now every one of those, you were just practicing on a real customer, a real prospect who, if you didn't do it well the first time, you lost that opportunity. It's a huge, it's a big source of wasted opportunity. And same thing with, leadership, having critical conversations with any reports. It's like, if there's something around a critical company policy, or, and that the leader, you don't have more than one chance to get it right. So, using some of this technology to automate the conversation. And there are kind of a couple parts of it. I mean, one there are, and I'll actually just go ahead and jump and I'll show you kind of oh, we've actually got a poll question next, but let me go ahead and I'll just show you what this is an example right here of that, and then I'll jump back over to ask you all the question after. But I wanted to show you an actual screen of what this looks like, so you can kind of get a visual. But so this person here on the left, this is actually not a human. This is actually an AI. So this is how you create this is basically through an Excel spreadsheet with here's the key conversation points that we want to answer in this way, and you upload it, and the system creates a lifelike AI avatar that this person on the left here would be speaking and looking like it's a real conversation. Now the person on the right, they've got their webcam on, and it's recording the conversation, and it's using generative AI to be able to get the conversation path right. Basically, in order to you give the AI here are the question answer pairs. Here are the key things that are that this particular scenario, maybe it's around a product launch, or maybe this is around an important new initiative at the company that we need our managers to be having conversations with folks around, or maybe this is some new product that we expect services to be having a lot of important conversations around a particular part of this. You program it so that you are the ones who have the expertise on what are the answers that that your company wants the representatives giving, right? So you give it those, right? Say, okay, here's the question, here's the answer, here's the question, here's the answer. But then from there, it's using this GPT, aka generative AI, to be able to it can tell when that particular question or answer has been given. So if it'll ask the rep a question, this person on the right is maybe the rep, and when she goes ahead and answers, she's not going to necessarily use the exact words that that you maybe typed in the QA in the question answer pairs to generate this avatar. So she might not use the exact wording, but because it's using this GPT generative AI, it can recognize when she has answered the question in the right way, or if she missed a certain part of it. And it's really powerful because as any of you who have been working at all playing around with Chat GPT or any of these technologies, it really can understand context, and so it's a really valuable tool. And you record this, it records the conversation between the two, and then share with this person's trainer or manager, and then you can start to leave feedback on the conversation. And again, you're leaving that feedback on your own time. So this is all happening on, you're not having to schedule a meeting, and you're not having to have the person practice on a live customer or on an employee. So as you can see, boosting confidence, it allows you to do this at scale, much better learner engagement. You can actually have so much going on as far as practice in a lifelike sort of simulated environment. And then again, back to this point of, you want to be thinking in terms of, how do I augment my human, the human element, the human training and learning. How do I augment that? Being able to then take this and have a trainer or a manager leave feedback on the video. And I think I've got a screen at some point later in the presentation I'll show you, but you can quickly, just with one click, and boom, the person can leave a comment card right on the video, or it's actually like down below, and get some human feedback on there on how the conversation went. That's so important, again, to drive that engagement among the learners. So I do want to jump right into a poll question around game tape. And so this is, again, I talked about conversation conversations happening over video conference now, so much more. And so are your, sales employees or your revenue team employees, services, et cetera, watching their game tape of how they, what they did on calls, how they answered questions, et cetera. So I'd love to hear from everybody. What are your sellers watching game tape? Is it no, not at all, not enough, but it's manual, or yes, and we're sharing that with peers and using it for learning opportunities, etc. So I'd love to hear from everybody.
It's so interesting, Jake. You and I were talking earlier about how we went to this video first or this digital first engagement during the pandemic response. And until we were prepping for this webinar, it never even occurred to me to think, look at this great source of feedback. Just let's go back and watch the recording. And I actually use it in my job now because we record a lot of sessions, and I do it quite a bit for myself, but it was something that I had not considered when I was in that capacity before. So interested to see. Let's take a look at those results, David, and see how the crew is feeling about that.
Yeah, so definitely looks like an opportunity.
Most of us are not doing it enough. And I think that's a great, like you said, Jake, a great opportunity.
Yeah. Yep. And I see Amanda saying she works in contact center learning, and they still use an old school calls. Having digital examples would be so much better. It's true. It's having the being able to, and I'm going to show you a little bit about some of the technologies and approaches available here. But this is really and Matt, to your point, this is for call centers, for sales employees on video conference doing selling, but even for if you're as a trainer doing a training session over instructor-led training, it's taking those videos and bringing those in, and you can get lots of valuable insight on how what topics you've covered, your rate of speech, the engagement from the audience, and and then what different topic areas throughout, so you can quickly maybe clip out a piece of that and share it as an example if people are asking several questions about it afterwards. Lots of really valuable stuff. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to show you. Let's see. I think we've got a section. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about, so basically being able to take some of those examples, right, and go ahead and apply the sort of a machine augmented, or a machine augmented feedback mechanism on that. So you can go ahead, and now you've got sales employees, services employees going ahead and doing all of these calls on video conference. Your learning platform can pipe all of those in, and now you can grab an example from there, and with just like one or two clicks, you can easily clip out a piece of that session, of that call, or whatever it might be, and share that into one of those learning recommendations that I showed you before. And again, using AI to not only to tag it, like I had talked about previously with some of the field generated content, but also using AI to go ahead and you can be typing right into the search bar and have AI go through and scour all of the calls and find, say you're searching for a particular objection that you want to see some examples of how folks have handled that. You can, having AI scour all of the calls and stitch together a highlight reel of like 5 or 6 of the best examples from the field on, talking to that objection. And, this is something, we're seeing tons of organizations making a lot of use of this, because, it allows you to see the examples of success and things that are, maybe elevating voices in the organization that, maybe this person over in this region who is, not in one of the premier regions in the organization, but they've got a really great way of handling this particular question. We want to elevate that voice, because a lot of times we find that we're elevating the most visible folks, or the top performers, but there's a lot of times there's a lot of gold in, just across the whole employee base, that things that are happening. So really, really valuable there, for, and again, when you're talking about reinforcing learning, again, on that spectrum from the left to the right, we started with learn, then we went to practice and certify, and then now reinforcement, which is, this reinforce kind of happens throughout the whole process, but I'm going to talk about it here because it's pertinent. Go ahead and make this really, really easy for all of you to now ensure that all of these folks have the right knowledge after a training session, and more than just, okay, let's give them an assessment, but this is, okay, now we can take the questions from that assessment. Maybe it was something that was generated through GPT, like I talked about, and bring those into the system and upload them into a spreadsheet in the system, and then boom, the system creates what we call really like a flashcard deck, basically digital, but basically questions with a corresponding multiple choice answer, and then an answer explanation at the end, and it's something that you can deploy programmatically for all of your learners coming out of a session, for them to be getting questions for the next, maybe 2 weeks. And it's, 30 seconds a day. They maybe get 1 or 2 questions a day. And as they're answering these questions, and they get a ping on their mobile device, and it's like, answer this question really quickly. And they're going ahead and they're selecting the answer they think is best. They're getting a quick feedback on what the right answer is. And it takes them maybe 30 seconds. And they're doing this, again, like I said, maybe, 1 or 2 of these a day at a certain time. And as they're answering, each learner is answering questions, they are it's again using AI in the background to detect whether or not the person has a good understanding of this, or a good mastery of this particular topic. And many of you may have heard of the technique using spaced repetition. And spaced repetition is basically, for anybody who isn't familiar, it's a scientifically proven technique, that it's a really a learning technique, where it involves giving a person exposure to a question, and if they get it, a few questions at a time over like a several day span, or maybe several couple weeks span, and as they have demonstrated that they understand it, based on they answer the question correctly the first time, or maybe they happen to get it twice in a row, you can think of it as like a flashcard deck. If they do some of these things that show that they understand it more, that question gets moved to the back of the deck, and they don't get that question as much. Some of the other questions that they're answering may be taking longer to answer, or maybe they got it right one time, but then the next day they didn't get it right. Those questions, that the AI is able to bring those to the front of the quote unquote deck, and give them more exposure to those areas that they don't have as good of a mastery with. So, again, this is adaptive learning. It's, using AI to really, to fight that sort of that forgetting curve that I'm sure all of you know all too well, where, folks are leaving a training session, and there's, some huge percentage of information gets lost, because if you don't use it, you lose it. It's just like with exercise. It's the same thing. The brain works the same way. If you're not actively practicing some of this information, it's gonna get forgotten. And again, the stuff that I just kind of shared with you is a lot of skills based. This is very much knowledge based and facts, learning a body of facts around a certain product, or if it's an employee going into a new role or selling in a new territory, whatever it might be, or a new leader, there are certain things that they just have to memorize. And so this is how you can kind of make that scalable and much more programmatic using AI. So, and the next part here, what I want to talk about is improve. And, this is being able to understand, right, what are the things that folks are actually doing on live calls, and what are the things that are, demonstrated to be the most effective practices for a given scenario. And this is basically, you're able to start to some of the stuff that I've talked a little bit about some of this already, but being able to under give learners a more sort of self-directed way of upskilling, helping to sort of scale your coaches or folks on your team, and basically provide much more detailed feedback on lots of different examples of folks doing their job, whether it's having, again, a lot of it conversation based. So it's going to be, if it's a sales rep having a conversation with a prospect, or a services employee, or in a call center, them an example of a scenario, some of these things where it's actually face to face and using video to kind of simulate that, and so you're able to start to take this and say, okay, how can we what can we do to to because what can we do to allow for more of these sort of asynchronous video role play based, coaching and giving feedback on these, video footage, really, of folks talking about things that are relevant to a particular scenario, delivering a pitch for a product, demonstrating a conversation, having a conversation with maybe one of those AI avatars that I showed you earlier. How can we then, it creates a challenge around, who's gonna review all of this footage. It's a lot of footage now that you get, and so now that's where you're starting to use AI on the back end when folks' videos are coming in, and you've got maybe examples of role plays that a seller or a services rep is engaging in over video with one of those avatars, or maybe it's over video conference with a manager, and you're taking that footage and bringing that into the learning platform, and then now you can quickly have use AI to sort of go over the whole video and the whole exchange, the whole simulated conversation, or maybe it's a real conversation, from footage from a real conversation, and start to suss out insights, right? What is how fast is the person talking? Are they using a lot of filler words like ums and ahs? Have they, we know that there are these topic areas that, they need to touch on in these conversations, and they need to keep bringing the conversation back to, in order for that conversation to produce the outcome we want. Are they touching on all those areas? Are there areas where they've said something in a way that was not the way we want it to be messaged to a prospect, or maybe a leader was having a conversation with a report, and it wasn't, they didn't communicate, they didn't respond in the way that we know is the most effective way, right? So now you can go ahead and use these, we call them AI virtual coaches, AI coaching. Again, there's this is the Allego platform, but there's others similar like this, where you are allowing these sort of coaches, virtual, to to provide this feedback on the calls. And they're giving you all of these things, the words per minute, filler words, these terms that are really important. It's kind of small, but you can see down here at the bottom these little green dots, and there's some like a red dot on this timeline. And it basically, the AI is giving little markers along the timeline of the video of, here's a warning area. This is an area right here at this point in the video. The rep said something that they maybe shouldn't have said, or they said something not the optimal way. Over here, in the video, on the timeline, there's a green dot that shows, okay, this is an example of where they did something really, really great. Maybe this is a fodder for a best practice video. Again, it allows for your human coaches to be able to more quickly jump to the points throughout that conversation that matter most, right? And so if I'm a coach or I'm a manager, I'm someone on one of your teams who's providing coaching and training and feedback on any of these role plays, live calls, simulations, whatever it is, I can now, I can jump in and I can maybe touch 5 different videos in the time it would have taken me to do one before without this, because now I can jump right to the point in the video where the learner did something, something of interest, right? And so it's a really, really valuable way, again, to scale the process of review and coaching and feedback for a lot of these more substantive, sort of conversation-based, non-verbal types of communications and practice. And then also it allows for the learner to self-assess, because as they're doing their recording, they're seeing this too. So they're able to see, oh, I didn't touch on the right thing, or I was speaking too quickly, or I was saying or ah too much, whatever. And they can go ahead and re-record if they need to, etc. So it's a really, really powerful way to kind of scale that. And again, anything that you're thinking about as far as if you're evaluating or just looking into technologies like this, learning platforms, etc., it's the key is around, how do you scale, sort of use AI to augment the human component. And that's what this last slide here is about. It's about, ensuring adoption of your learning and engagement, right? This quote we've got, or this stat on the side, this is, many of you may know, it's a Burson stat, but 1% of the typical work week is how much is spent on skills and knowledge improvement. And that's, so there's not a lot of time to be pulling folks out of the field to learn and train and improve, but they need to learn and train and improve. So how can we fit this into the flow of work, right? Many of you have heard, it's been sort of a buzzword in the industry, learning in the flow of work. And this is sort of the reason why you need that, right? And so, this first point here, using machines to connect learners to those in the know. We talked about user-generated content captured by learners out in the field, using machines to prompt them at points when critical points when they maybe have just done something that could be worthy for others to hear about how they did it. Prompt them, get them to submit some of those content, and then you end up with a treasure trove of great content. And then now, again, using machines, using AI, and that's machines is interchangeable with AI. Using it to scour all that and curate it and share it with others who are about to go into a similar situation. Super, super powerful. Augmenting the human coaching, don't replace it, right? It's about using the AI to direct coaches to the points within a conversation or a message or a pitch or, whatever role play, where the human coach can jump in and just give the real good feedback. And plus that also really, if you've got, picture you're an employee and you go ahead and you put yourself out there and you do one of these role plays and then you send it in and no human ever looks at it. It's only an AI that looks at it. What kind of, are you going to be really keen on doing that again next time? Not really, if you've never if nobody even looked at it. So that's where it's about, again, augmenting the human coaching and feedback with the AI, not replacing it. And then the last point here, automating manual L&D processes, right? Generating knowledge checks, generating an assessment, tagging content, creating those programmatic quizzing that I showed you, where you're not having to manually send out quiz questions to folks, or what would often happen is you put it all into one 10 or 15 question quiz at the end, and then that's it, you call it a day. And because you'd have to be manually each day sending quizzes to all the learners, and that's just not, that's not feasible. So automating these processes, making it easier to generate the right knowledge checks and assessments, to distribute those more effectively, to curate and tag your learning content more effectively, and make it more easy to find in the flow of work. That's kind of the whole key. So and I think I can go ahead, Matt, and I'll hand it back over to you. We've got our Q&A here. I would love to hear from everybody if you've got any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. So we've had a few questions about a couple of different things coming in. I've already we've handled some of those in the Q&A window, but I thought I would point out for folks that I did get a couple of questions about the generative AI capability being built into the learning platform. So I do want to reinforce and just confirm with you, Jake, these screenshots Jake mentioned at the top, the screenshots that you've seen are from the Allego platform. And so he is speaking to capabilities within what Allego is capable of doing.
Yep.
And to your point also, Jake, there are others out there.
Definitely. Yep. There's any of these, Allego, the category of technology, a lot of folks would call it sometimes revenue enablement technology, sales enablement technology, or learning and readiness technology. Go look up those terms, go look that up, and you'll see there's a handful of vendors along with Allego, and others provide this stuff as well with this GPT powered stuff that I showed you in the platforms, and use what you saw here today as sort of a benchmark, to say, okay, what is possible and what should I be looking for in a technology.
Yeah, and there was one question I'd love to get your take on, which was around the whole security and intellectual property conversation from way back at the kind of start of our time together. Talk a little bit about the differences between platforms that are enabled with this generative AI capability, versus using the external generative AI tools like the ChatGPT or the Claude AI or the Bard or something like that. And what would you recommend for folks that are listening to this as they start to think through, how can I start applying some of this technology? What should they do to think through the implications for security?
Yeah, great question. This is a whole area. I think, it's a good place to start to kind of get your feet wet, or, to get some exposure to, using these kind of technologies to, generate quiz questions or what have you. But when you start getting into when you start getting into using confidential information, sensitive, commercial information, it's really, you're not going to get the level of security that most organizations will need to do this at scale, and to do this to really do this in earnest, unless it's in the learning platform that you're using. And the reason being is because when it's integrated into your learning platform, you've already got all of your corporate security protocols in place for users signing into that platform, and single sign on, and making sure that whoever can access it is has the correct permissions to be able to, access it. And, if, what happens if you generate an assessment and that is now sitting in that platform. That's all this information, this sensitive corporate information. Well, you've already got all kinds of security protocols that your IT team has worked out with the vendor for the learning platform that keep that information safely in the platform. And things like if you've got an employee accessing stuff on their mobile device and then they leave the company, how are you going to be able to wipe all of that information out? That's another, something like that, where when it's a corporate, sanctioned learning platform and vetted and secure,
Right.
you can quickly with one button, you can wipe all the any of your company's data right off of that person's phone remotely. You know what I mean? So it's things like that when you start to get into using this in more in earnest, rather than just like sort of on a trial basis to understand how it works, that's when you really should consider that.
Absolutely. And just to what I would reiterate there is we are at Brandon Hall Group, we are advocates for building those partnerships internally with your IT teams, your security teams, because they will help you navigate those waters as you try to solve for that problem. So Jake, thanks so much. This was great. I think we got exactly what we were after here, and appreciate your time and your effort. For those of you that joined us, thank you so much for sticking it out. You're going to get a link to this recording as well as a copy of the deck delivered in your email within the next couple of hours once the recording is time to process and all of those things take place. Also, my email address is on this slide. So if you have other questions or things that you think about, or you want more information on how Brandon Hall Group can help you navigate this future of work in learning and development, please feel free to reach out or check out our site at brandonhall.com. Jake, again, thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, everyone. Really enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.